Hello! You're probably wondering that you want to learn all about Death Valley. Well, let me tell you about it. Now see, this is a picture of Death Valley, which is in the middle of California. See, the reason it's called Death Valley is that many, many years ago, probably in the late 18s or 19s, pioneers were traveling through Death Valley in order to get to the other side of California. Basically, it was very hot there, so they had to split up in several groups. One of those groups was led by a man, and supposedly this man died in that group because of either hunger or thirst. So, a couple months later, the group was still stranded out in the Death Valley when the other pioneer group came and rescued them. When they were going away from Death Valley, one of the pioneers said, "Goodbye, Death Valley," and that's how the name came. It kind of stuck with it. So anyways, there are lots of towns in Death Valley. Most of them are ghost towns, which means they're either deserted or deserted. And deserted means there are no people in those towns. Basically, there are lots of towns because they discovered gold in Death Valley. So that's when many towns began. But after a while, the gold began to run out, and eventually it did run out. So they had to abandon Death Valley because there was no more gold. Now some of these towns are still alive today, such as Furnace Creek, the Devil's Hole Golf Course, which is the lowest point in the U.S., Ashford Mills, which is a ghost town, and Saratoga Springs. Now this valley is like in the middle of California and on the side of Nevada. There are springs there as well. You know, springs like water, like hot springs, like geysers, geysers, whatever. There are many towns there, like Skidoo. It sounds like an Indian name because Indians used to live in Death Valley. The reason they were driven out from Death Valley is because pioneers eventually came. Skidoo is now a ghost town. But however, in 1913, the temperature rose up to 134 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. Anyways, I'm going to get out some cards here so you can learn more about Death Valley. Now you're probably wondering, where is Death Valley? Well, I just explained it to you. In Southern California. What is Death Valley? Well, it was made a national park in 1994, and as usual, you know, it's a desert, it's also a valley, a dry place, a hot place, and it became a national monument in 1933. It was founded, here's the history of Death Valley. 1,000 years ago, water was very plentiful until the drought came. Now I don't know why the drought came, so, Indians used to live there, which I said so. Plus, pioneers traveled through California, which I just explained again. Characteristics, it's hot, it's dry, and every year there's less than 2 inches of rain. That's barely any rain at all, in fact. But every 5 to 10 years, flowers bloom all over Death Valley, so basically like a beautiful sight, and the flowers are wildflowers. Features. The Devil's Hole is home to the rare Devil's Hole pupfish. The racetrack is basically rocks that move. Nobody's seen them move, so they never know why they move, but they know they move because they leave tracks on the ground. So it's basically called the racetrack. Springs and seeps. Springs like what? It's kind of like an oasis. Sort of, though. And there are sand dunes. Like over here, sand dunes are like hills of sand. There are many animals there, such as the common camel, water birds. Basically, water birds is not a water bird. It just flies around near water. There's antelope. There's jackrabbits, foxes, bighorn sheep, which basically sheep with bighorns, lizards, horned toads, rattlesnakes, doves, quails, and meadowlarks. Oh, by the way, doves, quails, and meadowlarks are basically a type of bird. Anyway, there are classes. I can't believe it too. There's hiking, there's bird watching, and there's biking. And there are actually 600 people who actually live there. Oh. Look, those are the cards. Now let me explain some more towns to you. There's Devil's Golf Course, which is basically like the Texas Springs, which is basically a spring in Texas, kind of. And there's Furnace Creek, which isn't exactly a furnace. It's just called Furnace Creek. And there's Scotty's Castle. Now, basically, Scotty's Castle is a castle named by this guy named Scotty. Yeah. I know. And there's charcoal kilns, which I don't know what a charcoal is, or a kiln, something. And over here is the Wild Rose. Now, in this place, you know that every 5 to 10 years, in this spot, wild roses appear. So it's a very beautiful sight that you really, really need to visit. Believe me. Plus Rhyolite, which is basically a town that still exists today. Because then it goes down. Anyway, Dainty's View, which is basically a view, and I don't know what a Dainty's is, or I don't know how to pronounce it either. It's basically like a beautiful view where you can look at the desert around you. It's a very beautiful sight. A very beautiful sight indeed.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What are you dressed as?
A pioneer.
Ah.
Let's give Alec a round of applause. Will you take some questions, Alec, about Death Valley?
Yep.
What did you find most interesting or surprising?
That every 5 to 10 years, flowers bloom across Death Valley. Yes, Nathaniel?
Was there more ghost towns or like living towns?
I think there are more towns instead of ghost towns.
Anybody else have a question about Death Valley? What are some of in the national park, what are some of the things people do there when they go visit?
Well, you know, the activities, they horse ride, they do yoga classes, bird watching, biking, hiking.
Do you have any desire to go visit?
Yes, I do. I want to go to Scotty's Castle. It sounds awesome.
Hey, big round of applause for Alec.